On the night of the massacre at 3 Kinnard Terrace, 24th March 1922, the McMahons' immediate neighbours were Rosabel Purdy at 1 Kinnard Terrace, who owned a boarding house and a nursing home run by matron Mabel McMurty at number 5. Shortly after 1:20 a.m, residents of the nursing home recalled being awakened by the sound of the McMahons' door being smashed in, followed by the crash of breaking glass. They listened to screams for help from the house and shots being fired. Nobody moved. Matron McMurty heard Eliza McMahon shouting to her to call the police, followed by the sound of more screams. Then Eliza called to her again, telling her to ring up the hospital and get ambulances. Matron McMurty phoned Glen Ravel Police Barracks, the headquarters of the Royal Irish Constabulary's D District, which was situated a few hundred yards from Kinnard Terrace. A nurse at the home saw a group of men running away from the McMahon house, but she couldn't make out their faces. It was a drizzling night. The men were concealed by an absence of street lighting at Kinnard Terrace and little or no moonlight. The manager of Purdy's boarding house, a man called Arthur Hamill, recalled that he was awakened by Beatrice Purdy, Rosabel's daughter, who told him that shots were being fired and to get up. He looked out of a window and saw a bright light streaming from the McMahon's house onto the street. As he pulled on his trousers, he heard bang after bang, as if the shooting was in the very house with him, and long and terrible screams of agony. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the Purdy's door. Hamill shouted to the men to identify themselves. Police on duty, came the response. Hamill opened the door. It was the police from Glen Ravel Street. He agreed to accompany them to McMahon's house next door. Once outside, on the street, Hamill saw that the door of McMahon's house was still ajar, and that there was smashed glass on the ground. He entered what he described as a house of horrors. He first saw John McMahon sitting on a chair near the hallway entrance to the dining room. Blood was seeping from his nightshirt, and he was struggling to breathe. Hamill moved toward him to help him, but cut his feet on the smashed glass. He returned next door to get his shoes. When he came back, he saw Eliza McMahon in the hallway. He gave her his dressing gown to cover her son, John. Hamill then looked further into the dining room. Owen McMahon was writhing in agony on the floor near the fireplace. 4 of his sons and Eddie McKinney were dead or dying close by. Eliza ran to her son Michael, who was hiding, wordless and in shock, under a large mahogany dining room table. He had escaped the shooting. 2 ambulances arrived at approximately 2 a.m. Frank, Patrick, and Gerard McMahon and Eddie McKinney were already dead by the time they were brought to the Mater Hospital. Owen died shortly afterwards. Bernard lingered on, dying on the 4th of April, 11 days later. A doctor gave the shaken ambulance party and police a shot of brandy when their job of removing the bodies and wounded to the hospital was completed. A journalist who visited the McMahon home on the same day as the murders described it as a scene from a slaughterhouse. On either side of the fireplace lay large pools of blood, thick, heavy, coagulated stuff that turned one sick with horror. In places it was rubbed and disturbed as if someone had rolled in it. In others it was clotted in lumps, as if someone had macerated a fresh bullock's liver and strewn it about. The dining room table was scarred by 2 bullet marks. On the table lay the remains of the victim's last meal: milk, butter, teacups, bread and oatcakes. On the sideboard stood an empty naggin of whiskey. An empty casing from a Welby revolver was also reported to have been found at the scene.